is Rich, and welcome to another episode of Rich Talks Records. This is one that I've really been wanting to do, and it's just a matter of time before I did it. From one Richard to another, today we are talking about the one and only Richard Hell. So Richard Hell, born Richard Myers, his parents did not have the last name of Hell. But Richard Myers was born in Kentucky, and then eventually with Tom Verlaine, whose name you might know, ventured to New York City. Along the way, they set a field on fire and got arrested. And when the young Richard Myers was questioned as to why he had done this by the cops, he said, "To watch it burn." And that kind of tells you a lot of what you need to know about the young Richard Myers. Kind of lived, they kind of lived as poets. They wanted to be writers and kind of lived very classic bohemian subterranean existences. And Patti Smith would be one of those people. Richard Hell and Patti Smith also did a lot of collaborative poems. So all these people knew each other. Tom Verlaine and Patti Smith, of course, were a couple. And then the band Television formed, which a lot of people sort of know Richard through Television. And Television was the first CBGB's band. They approached Hilly Crystal about performing there. It was just this little bar on the Bowery. And because other than that, Television just didn't have a place to play. My understanding, I believe this is a true story, is that they built the stage. That Richard Hell and Tom Verlaine and Billy Ficca and I guess Richard Lloyd literally built the stage. So, what's interesting about Television is the Television came out of the Neon Boys, which was a trio of Verlaine, Hell, and Billy Ficca. But they came just after the New York Dolls. The New York Dolls kind of imploded over like a 2-year period, and Television was sort of the next band after them, and were heavily informed by the Dolls. Richard he's written a lot of books over the years. This is I Dreamed I Was a Very Clean Tramp, his autobiography, which is amazing and brutally honest and self-deprecating, and it's an amazing book. You should absolutely read it. And then there's this Hot and Cold, which is a collection of essays and poems and diary entries and song lyrics. And this is a great patchwork of a book. But he talks a lot. There's a long essay in here about Johnny Thunders and the influence that the Dolls had on him. So, I have talked about in other videos auteurness. I talked about that like in the Love video. But Richard, my whole way of even thinking about that comes from an interview that Richard Hell did, where he was talking about himself and Verlaine and Patti Smith and some of the other people in New York, that they had specific ideas about rock and roll and how rock and roll should be presented, and kind of in the way that some of them started off as critics. It kind of mirrors the Nouvelle Vague in France, that that Godard and those guys started off as critics and went into making films, and Hell and Patti Smith, etc. Ventured into, they ventured off the page and onto the stage. Am I really, Jesus Christ, it's awesome that I said that. So anyway, that's a little bit of the backstory, that that they really had ideas about where rock and roll should go, what rock and roll should be, how it should be presented, how it should be performed, how it should sound, what the lyrics should be like, on and on and on. And as you know, prog and you know, as much as there was prog, and people always go at punk with the anti-prog angle, but really it was kind of an anti-slickness angle, an anti-overproduced angle. And I think that's the real issue, is that it's not so much that it was anti-prog, it was anti-slick, and it was anti-competence, or not even competence, virtuosity as a moat to prevent people from coming in and trying to create something. So, you know, they swam through that moat and stormed the fucking castle. The Richard Hell, just, you know, very kind of, this is kind of pro forma stuff, but it does bear mentioning that Richard Hell, the haircut, the random self-cut hair, greatly influenced what wound up happening in England. Malcolm McLaren saw, I guess he would have seen television, or maybe the Heartbreakers, when he had come to America to briefly manage or mismanage the dying days of the New York Dolls. So, you know, that and Hell had the triangle shirt. You can just sort of barely see the top of it here. But Hell would self-consciously rip holes in it. And part of the idea of the haircut and the holes was to, as he put it, mimic the haircuts that kids would have. And that, you know, that children had these sort of asymmetrical, screwed up haircuts, and that he was sort of trying to mimic that, and that rock and roll is this sort of suspended state of adolescence, and using that as a framework by which to create yourself and purely invent yourself. So he invented himself as not Richard Myers from Kentucky, but Richard Hell, fucking king of New York, you know, and he's, you know, he's the first self-conscious self-created punk rock person, the person who created an ideation for themselves and then became that, not as a character, but as a way of actually being. So, you know, he's a fascinating guy, a fascinating thinker, one of my favorites. I mean, I fucking love him, and I just think that he's a witheringly honest, kind of no bullshit, full on artist, and I just think that he's great, you know. So he only made 2 studio albums under his name, and then in the 90s he hooked up with Thurston and Steve from Sonic Youth, and Don Fleming from, then he was in Gumball, and made a 3rd album under the name Dim Stars. But other than that, it's a really, really, really small body of work. So there's two albums and 2 compilations. So this compilation, which, what year would this have come out? I don't even, 2005. Spurts. Spurts has 2 songs with the Neon Boys, so pre-television. So Love Comes in Spurts, and That's All I Know Right Now. Love Comes in Spurts is a really... So first of all, the sound of these 2 songs, part of what's so interesting with given that they wanted to liberate rock and roll, and that they were so forward thinking, and that they had short, jagged haircuts and ripped up leather jackets and slashed clothes, all of that stuff that wound up becoming self-conscious fashion just a few years later. Given that they were so forward thinking, what is remarkable about these 2 songs is that they could be on a Nuggets, they could be on Nuggets or on a Pebbles compilation. They are it sounds like there has been no music after 1966. They're almost like shockingly anachronistic sounding, but also charmingly so because they're amazing songs. The original version of Love Comes in Spurts is very different than what wound up happening. We'll get to that. But it's still, if this was the only version, it would be really cool and really awesome. And you'd be like, who was this band? Like, who were these guys, you know? And then That's All I Know Right Now is an absolute, like, early, could have been like a total rock and roll classic. Like it could have been, you know, the Kingsmen or Question Mark and the Mysterians or what are the Sonics, or it could be any one of those. Like, it's just a great rock and roll song. Sonic Youth later covered it, but the original is the best. As far as Hell's time in television, you know, there's some live stuff floating around out there. There's the Poor Circulation bootleg, which is a rehearsal tape done in an apartment. I don't think that he was ever really... I mean, in history bore this out, but he just was never, ever going to be long for that band. He was, you know, he was way too rock and roll for them and for where Tom Verlaine was going to take it. And it was clearly, I mean, history really bore this out, but it's so clearly Verlaine's band, and Verlaine so clearly wants it to be his band. So, you know, there's Blank Generation. So Richard's sort of defining song, Blank Generation, was one of the early big television songs, but, and they sort of do it, I don't even know, kind of almost in like I don't know. I mean, it's hard to explain. It would be like if Bob Ezrin tried to make a punk record. Like there's a sort of slightly camp quality to the guitar flourishes. I don't know. It doesn't quite fit. It's not the ultimate statement that it could be. And then Richard's other song from that period, Fuck Rock and Roll, which is hilarious and has really minimalist lyrics that are really, really, really funny and smart and awesome. You know, on the existing Poor Circulation tape, I mean, I'm not really sure what the hell Verlaine's doing, but it truly sounds like he's just trying to interrupt the song and fuck with it. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't understand. I don't understand it. But really, Poor Circulation, I think, I used to have a copy, I gave it away. To me, it's just a little too piss poor sounding to even really like evaluate properly, or, you know, it really is kind of like a historical piece more than it is anything else. But then, so Richard Hell was way too rock and roll for those guys. And then, you know, given that his fandom of the New York Dolls break up, 1975 comes around. And, you know, Verlaine had been squeezing Hell out anyway. And Richard Hell forms a band called the Heartbreakers with Johnny Thunders, Jerry Nolan, New York Dolls drummer, and Walter Lure on second guitar. Hell, of course, is playing bass. And the Heartbreakers wound up becoming, down the road, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers. And you would think, given that that these guys had similar... here they are. Given that they had similar interests and similar recreational activities, interpret that how you will. Richard Hell was too rock and roll for television and too fucking weird for the Heartbreakers. And what should, on paper, be an absolute, like, dream marriage, is intermittently successful. And I will, as soon as I'm done fucking about with this, I will get into the Heartbreakers. So, as I said, with Hell, there are 2 albums and two compilations. Spurts has become sort of his de facto statement, and the one that is fairly easily, readily available. This one, Time, which came out in 2002, seems to have kind of fallen off the face of the earth. It was put out by Matador, and we'll get to this, it's an expanded sort of reissue of a cassette-only release he did in the 80s. We'll get to that when the time comes. But it was originally in the 80s when he put it out in 83. It was called R.I.P. But Time has the full Heartbreakers, not really studio, but rehearsal tape recordings. This Live at Mother's release is really cool. It's very powerful. It's rough sounding, but it's still really cool. It's a fun, cool rock and roll record to have. But I'll be honest, I don't listen to it very often. The Heartbreakers, though, there are, 4 or 5 songs, and I will get into those now. So this opens with the next version of Love Comes in Spurts. Richard cut a version with each band, and you can kind of tell you can tell his musical biography, or you can tell his journey by the 3 versions of that song. This is like far more straight up rock and roll. It's got like the amazing surging Johnny Thunders guitar playing. If you're a fan of Johnny Thunders, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you're not a fan of Johnny Thunders, I don't know how you could like rock and roll and not like Johnny Thunders. I think his guitar playing is as crucial to loving rock and roll as Chuck Berry or Bo Diddley or Keith Richards. To me, he's right up there. He's one of the ultimate fucking guys, as far as I'm concerned. That's how rock and roll guitar should be fucking played. Like he's, that's when it sounds right, you know? So, Love Comes in Spurts. It's far closer to what's gonna happen on the Blank Generation album, but it's not quite there yet. But it's still amazing just because, and also the sheer power of Jerry Nolan. Jerry Nolan's one of my favorite fucking drummers in all of rock and roll. God damn, what a fucking drummer. Unbelievable drummer. So, and then we get into the famous weird odyssey that is Chinese Rocks. Chinese Rocks, written by Dee Dee Ramone, given to Richard Hell to finish off, brought to the Heartbreakers. Johnny Thunders sort of heisted the song. Thunders would do that. He would take songs and like, not in the case of Chinese Rocks, but he would like retitle them and shit and be like, well, this is my new song. Johnny Thunders was like an old blues guy with his authorial looseness. And I suppose very punk rock in his disrespect for copyright law. Thunders played fast and loose with like kind of most things in life, so why not credit? But at any rate, the Heartbreakers version, and I will eventually, when I figure out exactly what Johnny Thunders I want to review, because if you know his oeuvre, you know that it's a endless sea of quasi-legal bootleg releases. I'm like, so when I figure out what the hell out of that I want to actually review, there will be a Johnny Thunders video, and I will like rhapsodize about everything that I love about him. But that time hasn't come yet. I will say the Heartbreakers version of Chinese Rocks, as Iggy said about I Got It Right, kicks like a fucking mule. It's one of the all-time ultimate, like, genius fucking rock and roll riffs. My God, it's just, it's as great as, whatever. You put it up against any Wild Thing or any Chuck Berry anthem. I mean, it's as good as rock and roll can be. It's a perfection of the art form. But this is interesting because the riff is there, and you got Johnny and Jerry and Walter, fucking giving it. But it's also at the same time not, it hasn't fully evolved, because here's the thing, and this is what becomes apparent, especially on this song. Johnny and Jerry and Walter are holding Richard back, right? Because Richard was too rock and roll for television, but too weird for these guys. So they're holding back the weirdness. But here's the thing, he's holding them back from their destiny of being the ultimate get down rock and roll all-time motherfuckers. So it should be the dream marriage, and yet it is not. So also, this has the wonky final verses that Richard wrote to finish off the song, which has the guy sort of, I guess, narrating from beyond the grave, and I'll be honest, doesn't do the song a lot of favors. I think it almost casts it like a little too much as like one of those like 50s teen death ballads. It takes away some of the power of the song, and it takes away the, part of what makes the Heartbreakers version so like kind of beyond belief is that they're going to hell and they don't care. It's totally go for broke. And by having the final verse where the guy dies, or the protagonist dies, even though there's not a moral happening, it implies, I don't know, there's some sort of resolution to it, even if it is just the final resolution, and the narrator finds that he's happy to die. But I just, like I said, I think it takes away from the sheer, like, damn the torpedoes wildness, Anyway, then there is Can't Keep My Eyes on You, a Johnny song that here is awesome and is great, but it got tighter and better and more awesome later on, after, by the time they recorded it in, I guess, 77, it was watertight. And so this is cool, and it's very, very interesting to hear it, especially with Hell playing bass and everything. But, it would become much, 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 much more later on. And then the last song is Hurt Me, which is a really interesting collaboration between Hell and Thunders. It's really sort of like fusing their two sensibilities, and it has kind of a weird ballad-ish intro, and then it gets more rocking, and the rocking part feels very Johnny. The lyrics are totally Hell and poetic and thoughtful in a way that Johnny isn't. Johnny doesn't reflect quite like that. He reflects, but it's brutal and and far more rooted in like visceral pain and overwhelming emotions. And Johnny isn't gonna sort of separate to write something at a remove to be more poetic. So I love Thunders, but that's not what he does. So it's an interesting song, but it kind of shows why there had to be a parting of the ways. So Hell, one of the most important people, and the punk scene in New York is now well underway, and Hell has now been in bands with two of the most important guitarists and two of the most important other figures in this scene, collaborations with Patti Smith, but yet he hasn't sort of gone and done his own thing. And really that's what it is. He had to be the leader of his own band. And even when you look at the end of the New York Dolls, Johnny, and you look at Johnny's contributions to what they were doing, the live footage of them from 74 and the stuff on his stuff that's on the Red Patent Leather bootleg, it was clear that Johnny was going to have his own band. It's clear that Tom Verlaine was going to have his own band. And I think after the Heartbreakers, Richard you know, it just becomes very obvious that Richard Hell has to have his own band. And that, of course, became Richard Hell and the Voidoids. And we're going to get to that right. Richard Hell finally formed his own band, the Voidoids. And what a band it was. Truly lightning in a bottle. So we have Richard Hell. We have guitarist Ivan Julian. And then there's this guy, Robert Quine, lead guitar player. They're far more of a guitar team than they're given credit for, but Robert Quine was basically the de facto band leader in a lot of ways, and guitar genius. If you've watched my Lou Reed video, you already know my feelings about Robert Quine, and get ready, because those feelings are going to be restated quite often in this video. And then this guy wearing Richard Hell's cut-up triangle shirt is Mark Bell, also known as Marky Ramone. Yes, Marky Ramone got his start in the polar opposite of the Ramones, the Voidoids. And then this is their one and only album, Blank Generation, with the original cover. So the iconic "You Make Me Blank." So this is a reissue that I got in 2017 with the cool collage sleeve and the lyrics, and then this was issued on blue vinyl. So there was a 40th anniversary edition of this record that came out on CD that had an extra disc of alternate takes and then two sets of live recordings of a few songs each from CBGB's, one in 76 and one in 77. The alternate takes, so there's a couple Voidoids alternate takes from this record of I'm Your Man and Betrayal Takes Two on this as well. The alternate takes are interesting. I would say not essential. And I want to take a moment and say, sometimes in my videos, if you've been watching them, I point out live stuff I think you should check out, or B-sides, or previously unreleased stuff, like in the Iggy videos, I mentioned a couple specific songs. If I bother to mention those songs and you like the album or the artist in question, I'm not just doing that to be a completist. The stuff I specifically mention and take time to talk about is stuff that I feel as strongly about as the great stuff that's on the albums. So I just sort of want to put that out there. I don't do it just to be anal retentive or completist or even thorough or whatever. It's because I think you'll enjoy it if you like this. So just so you know, that's why I try. So if I feel like something's cool or interesting, but not like you've got to hear this, then I tend to move on pretty quickly. So just kind of so you know. So the alternate takes on that edition, I did not purchase it because I have needed to spend money on other things in life, and at times between moving house a few years ago and getting things set up, sometimes quite honestly and very realistically, space is an issue. So and then the problem is I missed the window to buy it, and now it's whatever, some ungodly amount of money to try to get a copy. So I don't know that I'll ever purchase it at this point. I mean, it would be cool, but this will do because I have the original sequence. So I very much think that, with kind of one exception, I think they made all the right choices in terms of choosing which takes, and that includes. And Clinton Halen, if Clinton Halen ever sees this, he'll be tearing his hair out, because predating the Blank Generation album, they recorded a 3-song single. It was Another World, Blank Generation, and I'm now forgetting the other song, for Terry Ork's label, Ork Records. And Clinton Halen, that's he thinks that's the best thing that ever was, and if you don't like that, then you're a moron and a and blah blah blah. Richard Hell specifically in an interview singled Clinton Halen out once and said this guy just finds the most obscure thing and celebrates that so he can feel superior to his own readers. And I think that's a very funny assessment. And there are times when Clinton Halen, especially in Bob Dylan world, when if Clinton says this version as opposed to that version, I will say a lot of times Clinton is on the money. I don't know that it's purely about being super obscuratinist. However, in the case of the Orc single, I kind of feel like how I feel about the alternate Electric Ladyland Electric Lady studio takes. Interesting, but they chose the right versions for the album. Like, so I don't know that the Orc single is cool, especially if you're a fan, but I don't think like, oh, that's where they crystallized and it's, as opposed to like, let's say the MC5, how they recorded the single version of Looking at You in 68, and then there's the version on Back in the USA, and Back in the USA, it's perfect, it's awesome, but you got to hear the 68 single version, because that's kind of a whole different beast, and it's fucking unbelievable, and it's red-blooded, full-on perfect rock and roll, I kind of expected, the way Halen had talked about the Orc single, I thought it was going to be like that. I thought it was going to be like, oh my god, I can't wait. And I heard it and I was like, yeah, this is cool. The album's better. Everything on the album is done better. So anyway, what I purchased in my youth, this would have been, this would have been another Tower Records late night, after 11 or after 10:30 purchase. There was this, I think I want to say the town was called Flowerfield, way out in Bufu. I found this in the racks. This is the 1990 CD issue. And as you can see, mine is pretty beaten up because I've had this for a long time. So I would have gotten this around maybe 97. Why in God's name they replaced this amazing album cover with this kind of image of Richard, I don't know. Though I will say the back cover with the triangle torn up t-shirt is pretty fucking amazing. Another one of Richard's, Richard making his own clothes is, here's another variation on the torn up triangle shirt. Not only did that influence the Sex Pistols, but, and I don't know what order these are going to go up in, but in a different video I talked about the book Please Kill Me. Please Kill Me was another thing that Richard made. So it's funny that at the same time that Johnny Rotten, unbeknownst to him, when Johnny Rotten had made the I Hate Pink Floyd shirt, Richard Hell was walking around New York. This is 70s fucking scary, Prez Ford says to NYC drop dead era New York, right? The city on the brink. A city declaring bankruptcy, right? Richard Hell had made a t-shirt with a target on the back and painted a target on the back of the shirt, and it said, "Please kill me." And apparently he stopped wearing that shirt because people would come up to him after shows and want to take him up on it. So he got a little freaked out and stuff. But the guts that it took to wear that, like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in fucking Times Square in 1975, 1976. Holy shit, that is... He would wear that, he would dress like this when he was going to fucking cop dope. Like, holy fuck. Unbelievable. So they replicate the collage. So this version of the album does some weird things. It adds 2 bonus tracks, which I will get to. but it replaces Down at the Rock and Roll Club with an alternate take. And that I've never understood. It is sonically so different than the rest of the album, and the rest of the album has a very, it's very, very, very specific sounding. It is such its own animal, and throwing an alternate take on here is the equivalent of taking a great painting and just like blowing a shotgun hole through the middle of it. Like, so even though the alternate take is not bad, it just doesn't make any goddamn sense, and it kind of makes the whole thing then feel like a compilation. It really, and it screwed up my relationship to the album, because there was always like this weird interruption on it. So as much as I love this album, I always sort of treated it less album-ish and more compilation-ish. And that's wrong, because it's such a brilliantly thought out, perfectly realized, fully realized album statement, which I knew it was, but my obsessiveness or whatever, like, just, I was always irritated by the inclusion of that song. So anyway, so other than Liars, Beware, and then some stuff we'll get to on side 2, I want to say all of side 1 is all solely written by Hell. And we kick things off with Love Comes in Spurts, the definitive version. First of all, Marky Ramone, I guess as I'll refer to him, is the best drummer in the Ramones. And I say that because there's a little cult of Richie Ramone's people, and there's you have people who are all about Tommy because of the original 4. But Mark is the best drummer simply because he played on this and the Ramones, and this has nothing to do with the Ramones. He was able to modify his style. So even a drummer, a virtuoso, genius, amazing drummer like Clem Burke, I think when he briefly became Elvis Ramone, he was at 4 or 6 shows he lasted with the Ramones because he couldn't modify his style to fit in with them. The fact that Mark Bell was able to become Marky Ramone and hang in there for as long as I know it was 2 stints, but to be the longest running drummer and to play however many thousands of shows he played with them speaks volumes about what he is as a musician. Kind of like when Mickey D joined Motorhead. The fact that you had this super virtuoso guy who was able to then just plug into the Motorhead, the Lemmy groove, and be that, it speaks volumes about what an unbelievable drummer Mark Bell / Marky Ramone is. It's almost like 2 different guys, and that's why I'm having a tough time deciding what to call him here. But his drumming, I mean, there's a lot of Richard Hell, as there should be. There's a lot of Robert Quine. You have these 2 gigantic, outsized co-stars up at the front. But god damn it, Ivan Julian and Marky Ramone, in the same way that Hell is the star, but just behind him, Hell is the Orson Welles. And Quine is the Joseph Cotton, just off to the side, right? But then you've got another battle for who the MVP is between Ivan Julian and Mark Bell, because everybody's playing like, this is such a brilliantly put together band and a brilliantly cohesive musical unit. These guys are kind of create their own musical language, and And it's a shame that they didn't do more of it, because it really is lightning in a bottle, and they really are just an incredible 4-piece unit that it turns out with subsequent recordings you couldn't really swap out constituent parts for. There were other cool lineups of the Voidoids, but it's not fucking this, and it couldn't be this. So one of the things that's great about this record is it is remarkably well produced, but the best thing about that is it's basically made like a jazz album. And I know that people talk about the Voidoids being a jazz, sounding like a jazz band, rhythmically, etc., but it's recorded like a jazz album in that it is just an incredibly honest, straightforward, no-nonsense record. It is these guys playing live hard as one. And it's the incredibly non-pretentious honesty of it is what's so awesome. You know, I've seen think pieces, I mean, we all have, about how punk, criticisms of punk, that it was retrogressive. No. It's about honesty, and it's about, I mean, this is as honest as Hank Williams recordings. It's as honest as Bumps Blackwell producing Little Richard. It's just the sound of great musicians in a room playing, you know, and playing at the top of their abilities. So that's what's so cool about it. There's not a lot of tricks. There's not a lot of weird shit happening, like with the mix and whatever. And it's not that those are bad things to do, but just to have a statement by a band that's just this, it is what it is. It's a photo of these guys doing this. That's awesome, because you really can enjoy it from all different types of... You can listen to this record in so many different ways for the rest of your life then, and that's what's so cool about it. So I've gone on long enough. So, God damn it, Love Comes in Spurts. Mark's drums are amazing. Like the intro that he plays, and that intro, that kinetic, explosive, frantic cluster of notes that Quine opens with. It's one of the great, like, iconic openings on a rock and roll record, and Mark's like speed demon fills as it transitions into the verses. Richard's vocal style, his voice is kind of higher range, and just it's fucking rock and roll. It's real rock and roll. It's all it's Buddy Holly deluxe. It's all whoops and hiccups and you know, the sound of him getting breath to spit out the rest of the lines is a part of the vocal technique. Again, it's extremely, extremely honest. Patti Smith had a similar thing where you could hear her hitting her chest. I love that. It's fucking real. It's fucking real people playing real music. I mean, what fucking more do you want? You know, it's people pushing themselves as hard as they can go and forcing themselves into an explosive state in order to express themselves. It's so human in the best fucking way, and so just honest. And, you know, Richard talks about that, about how people, you know, the crowds at CBGB's, like, cramming themselves in, as he put it, they were so hungry for reality, you know, and that's what this is. It's, you know, emotional reality, right? So Love Comes in Spurts, lovelorn, teenager, hard, you know, learning life's hard lessons early. It's, and that's the other thing about Richard being a poet. This isn't some bullshit. This isn't some pretension. These fucking people, him and Patti Smith and a few others, they were fucking poets. They were actual poets. And you can tell that Richard's an actual poet. He constantly references other poets, and he's clearly very, 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 very smart, and not in a pretentious way, but just in a, this is how his brain works, this is how he assimilates information kind of way. His brain is turned all the way on. But also just the actual construction of the words, and meters and choices of language, tonal shifts. Like, he's a true poet. And so this is teenage angst, teenage blues, but written at this really elevated, awesome level. And it's not arch. It's not arch, and it's not, I don't know, it's not some sort of like, it's not elitist or exclusionary or something. It's just written at a really fucking high level. And it's an amazing song, and it's one of the greatest songs ever. And fucking Quine's solo, clipped, beautiful notes, stretched all over the place. Like, I know that Quine used gear, but Quine uses gear in such an interesting way because there's not a lot of distortion. The guitars are actually kind of very like clean sounding. It is more of like a jazz thing, because it really is about note selection and about the intensity of what you're choosing to play and then how you're playing it. So it is. There's not any hiding behind effects, but there's also not enhancing too much with effects. It's just, again, it's just really honest, awesome playing. And what all the crazy shit that's coming out of the guitar is coming out of the guitar because of Quine's fingers and his brain and his heart. You know, that's what you're fucking hearing. You're hearing what's coming out of him, and the guitar is the conduit. And and goddamn, Mark's fucking outro. When Mark goes into the double time outro, and the vocal harmonies, like the backing, the almost sort of R&B-ish answering harmonies, but I guess doo-wop. That's what I mean. Like, this is like real rock and roll. It's all the eras of rock and roll coming at you, because you have kind of Dylan level lyricism, you've got R&B, you've got it. Quine was a huge James Burton fan, so you've got sort of country rockabilly happening. You've got all of these things happening at once. You definitely have some Rolling Stones and some Velvet Underground happening. So you're getting kind of like the best of the first 20 years of rock and roll condensed into this musical language and all of these cues and all of these idiosyncratic songwriting and lyrical choices that are wholly the band's. So it's not even like it's all like a homage, or that it's just a bunch of influences layered together. It's taking all of these great things from rock and roll, and then with their own sensibilities and their own incredible originality on top of it, and just the sheer excitement that you could hear of these guys finding their groove and fucking playing it and nailing it fucking perfectly, you know? So Love Comes in Spurts is about as good of an opener as you can possibly get on a rock and roll record. And then that kicks into Ivan Julian co-write on the music. Liars Beware. Liars Beware is cool, modern, sort of jazzy, modal lick, like, and that's, Love Comes in Spurts feels very rock and roll, and I guess it would be 4/4. After this, I'm not even sure what the tempo, what key signatures what rhythm signatures the songs are in, because it doesn't feel nothing feels 4/4, and they don't go for obvious gratification really at all on this record. And Liars Beware is the key, one of the key songs. But then there's so much intensity, like, Quine's sort of, I don't even know, like Dwayne Eddy by way of Dick Dale fucking beginning on the guitar solo, and then the way the notes all cascade and explode. And I have to apologize to Ivan Julian. I may be giving Quine credit for some of the shit that he does, because they do trade off on solos. Hell is really good about crediting who exactly plays what, but I'll be honest with you, it's kind of like Funkadelic Records. I can't keep track of that shit. And someday when I do my series of P-Funk reviews, because it'll take a long time, I'll just make a big goddamn hash of the whole thing, because I can never keep those things straight. So shame on me. Though, in the case of P-Funk, there seems to be confusion even among the band members as to who did what sometimes. But yeah, I for the purposes of this video, I would drive myself crazy if I tried to like exactly remember what Hell said in one set of books, in one book versus another interview versus liner notes on like. So yeah, I often assume it's just Quine unless it really doesn't sound like him. So Liars, and lyrically, Liars Beware is just a great. It's like, is it like the best ever like anti-snob song? It prefigures yuppies and obliterates them, verbally obliterates them. It's an amazing, it's an amazing countercultural, subcultural blast of vitriol at assholes who deserve it. And again, he's a fucking poet. His sense of language is so elevated. So his dressing down of these motherfuckers is like that much more impressive because he's obliterating them on their own terms. He's turning the Queen's English into the poetry of the streets or of the people. And it's amazing. And now we start getting into the kind of palmier parts of this New Pleasure. And part of, again, weird licks, weird clusters of notes, just lots of cascading, rising, falling, quick snatches. It sounds sometimes like there was a really aggressive tape editing playing, but then you see footage of Quine and that's how he plays the guitar. Like, that's what he is. That's what he does. That's why he's such a genius. Like, he totally invented this whole other style. And he was always very honest about his influences. And there's James Burton, there's Fifth Dimension era Birds, Roger McGuinn, like Lou Reed / Sterling Morrison. Like, he owns up to who he loves. But God damn it, it's so much of it is just his own ideas, and interesting, amazing ideas at that. But New Pleasure has another weird lick, and it is, again, rhythmically totally idiosyncratic. And it's, one of the things about New Pleasure, one of the things about this album, one of the things about Richard Hell's vocal style is, and it's something that doesn't, I think, get sort of talked about enough. There's a lot of explosiveness, which I think people perceive as anger, but there's a lot of explosiveness of sensuality and I don't know, pleasures of the flesh, I suppose, and the pursual of that. And New Pleasure is just such a weird, warped song. And it's not, I don't know, it's not sci-fi, it's not BDSM, I don't know what it is. But it is amazing, and I don't know, it's like it's an extremely damaged courting song, I guess. And again, just amazing. Like, we're at 3 perfect songs in a row, and I don't know, more amazing lyrics, and just, weird time signatures, just amazing. Then we slow it down for, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a country waltz, but a jagged, Broken Glass country waltz, and that is Betrayal Takes Two, another weird relationship song that has all sorts of digressions and implied narrative, and another amazing set of lyrics, not to be cut by your dull point of view. I mean, just incredible lyrics. Richard sings it with this halting honesty. So again, it's almost like a 50s ballad. He's almost like Johnny Ray, or like, it's almost like or like an old school like R&B weeper, it's or like Please 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 or something. It's fucking amazing. But then it's sort of in a waltz tempo, and it also could be it's also like avant-garde country music, and and the I don't even know what you would call it, the guitar interruptions, the loping, again, fragmentary shards of notes that periodically that break up the verses. It's unlike any other song you've ever heard. This is totally unique, totally creative. Oh, and again, Quine's solo is basically it's avant-garde James Burton. It's fucking majestic. It is. There's a very, very, very prolific YouTube music reviewer. His channel's called Almost Human, Ralph Vieira, and he mostly does like heavy metal, and he's a big Kiss guy, and he's big on Ace Frehley in particular, and he talks about Ace Frehley's solos as being songs within songs, which I always thought is a cool way of describing that. And kind of like, I feel like Robert Quine's, so that's a hell of a comparison to compare Ace Frehley to Robert Quine. Both, I mean, they were in New York at the same time. In a lot of ways, that's about where the similarities end, right? But, and I mean, Ace is awesome at what he does, so I don't want to cast aspersions. But it's just, I feel like, I don't know how many people are putting these guys in the same sentence, but Quine is like, these are like whole compositions within songs that take the source material being the song and like elevates it to all these strange, interesting places, and it almost like introduces new characters or gives you like flashback sequences to the characters' previous lives or something. Like, Quine takes these things into all these, it goes all over the place. He's just so imaginative, and it's elegant and majestic, and yet stuttering and herky-jerky, and again, broken glass, broken shards. It's amazing. It's a masterpiece of a song. I mean, but so far all we've had are masterpieces. And then that takes a dip. There is the least song on the record, in my opinion. It's a fun rock and roll song, Down at the Rock and Roll Club. Now, this version, of course, has the alternate version. What is on here, the actual album, I don't know which one I like better necessarily. This one at least sounds like it's part of the album. It's a cool rock and roll song. It's as un-rock and roll in its trappings as the rest of the material. But it's kind of the most like lyrically straightforward, and in some ways, I suppose, musically straightforward. It's amazing, but again, on something this great, if everything is perfect so far, something like almost perfect or not as perfect, you're going to, I don't know, notice that. It feels like it could have been an amazing B-side. I think if it was an amazing B-side, I'd be like, oh, this is such a cool song. But here, on both versions, so even the real version of the album, it interrupts things just a little bit, to my mind. again, it's still awesome, and you might love it. I have no idea what people think of that song. You might be all about it, and that's awesome. Like, why not? Why the hell not? It's just me being finicky, I suppose. And partially because I feel like everything else with side one is so unified. There's the one song that's kind of unlike the other songs just sticks out, though. Let me tell you, boy, does it stick out here, where it feels like it's flown in from, strange decisions were made. I don't know what was going on in 1990. But side one ends with Who Says It's Good to Be Alive, a song that Lester Bangs took major issue with. And Richard Hell is a very smart man, and he says in the song himself, there's nothing to win by this sort of an outcry. And so, the album has been flirting with sort of dark ideas or dangerous ideas, flirting on the outer rings of oblivion of self. And Who Says It's Good to Be Alive asks the question, right? Literally in the title. And, here's the thing, right? As somebody who has, I've said this before in other videos, as somebody who has spent long portions of their life in a depressed state, a song like this on an album this great and played as great rock and roll and not like some weepy ballad or something, it's fucking relief, It is a relief to be in a very dark state of mind, and sometimes where people don't even know that you're in that state of mind. I mean, I remember I went through when I was 16, I went through several months. I referred to it as a nervous breakdown. And I just would sit, I would sit burning things, watching things burn in my bedroom. I would sneak sets of matches out of the kitchen and just light things on fire, and watch them burn, and sit in my pajamas all day. And, as somebody who has done that and has been like that since they were very young, you have all of these thoughts that you're not supposed to be having. And you have all of these thoughts that are very dangerous, and that when you're not in that frame of mind anymore and you try to treat it like, oh, that was an aberration, or, oh, it was because I was going through this thing, like the girl dumped me, or whatever it is, to have a song that you can fucking just jump into and dance around to and flail yourself at, that is asking these questions, these scary, dangerous, very provocative questions, and in a very provocative way, it feels like somebody is finally fucking saying something that you've never been able to articulate for yourself. And it is joyous. And to take something that, because a lot of the time, when you're in that state, there's a lot of shame. And you feel, you're embarrassed that you even feel like that. And you're desperate not to feel like that. And Richard takes the private and just rips it out of his fucking guts and throws it out at you. And there's something to that with, like, I think, like, with weird, fucked up, transgressive lyrics in certain songs, whether it's certain rap records, like some of Eazy-E's stuff, or I just did a Slick Rick review. I'm not sure what order these are all going to come out in, but, like, the Indian Girl or Treat Her Like a Prostitute, like, there's something very powerful in art about saying things that you're not supposed to say. There's something very, very, very powerful in retching it out, and there it is on the floor, and now everybody knows. And the people who are going to relate to it can actually take some sort of joy or power or perceived or pleasure in it, in knowing that it's going to vibe out other people. And you know, in knowing that a lot of people aren't going to understand, and it's like, no, fucking deal with that. You know, this is what I have felt like every fucking day for months. This is what I feel like in, you know, quote unquote, in your world. Deal with that, motherfucker. And there's something incredibly, incredibly powerful. And I just think that it is as counterintuitive as it seems, especially now with, you know, content warnings and whatever. There's something incredibly, incredibly powerful about a song like this that is that unbridled, because it's a tremendous head rush of it's another weird, herky-jerky, frantic, rhythmically idiosyncratic rock and roll song, and Richard is in full blast because, again, he's tearing this stuff out of himself, you know, and he's talked about that in interviews, that he thought that was the highest level of creating something musically, that you wind yourself up and then you know, go off as a whirling dervish, right? So, you know, this song is a song that has meant a hell of a lot to me over the years. And on a surface level, you can look at it as, oh my God, this is maniacal, or this is bad thinking. But no, it's empathic thinking, and it's ultimately helpful and liberating thinking, because you don't fucking stay like that. That's the whole point. Because when you are like that, you do not want to stay like that. And it's better to get it out this way than to be anesthetized to the world. Because this way you can still engage and you can still feel things. And you feel a lot when you listen to the song, and you know you're alive, and you know the fucking demons aren't gonna fucking win, because you're getting so much joy and pleasure and release and kind of maniacal laughter from the sheer perversity that somebody wrote a song like this. It's fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing. And it's one of the things that keeps you literally fucking alive. And that is what rock and roll is all about, right? Fun songs about sad stuff. I forget the critic who said that, but, you know, I think I want to say it's a female critic. I forget who it is, but whoever it is, she got it. If it is in fact a she, got it 1,000% bang on the money. So then we flip the record over. So side two opens with the title song, "Blank Generation." One of the greatest rock and roll songs ever written. Like, in a lot of ways, probably Richard Hell's ultimate defining statement. I hesitate to say it is his greatest song. We'll get to that at some other point in time. Probably not this video, maybe the next one. We'll see. First of all, you know, one of the things I want to mention, and I really want to stress, is there, as much as this record, you know, yes, it's punk, and you know, but punk is what Richard Hell says it is. It's not, you know, it's not what you, again, there's no trappings of anything. This is just totally original, you know, and part of what is so cool about it is the musicality of it. That's the thing, like, these guys could really fucking play, and like, even Hell as a bass player, I feel like doesn't ever get talked about as a bass player. I don't think he talks about himself as a bass player, but like, the notes that he chooses, and when he does little counterpoints or little runs, they're always the right runs to make, or the right times to do. So even his like thudding sort of, I don't know, Lemmy-ish punctuation on the intro of Blank Generation is perfect. And just the intro itself, it's like one of the best intros in the history of rock and roll. And the role that it sets up, it's kind of like this really cool, I guess, shuffle. And it's a shuffle, it's a strut, it's an ultimate statement of purpose. Richard Hell's vocal is so commanding, his ability to howl it out, and that there's that level of believability and that lack of self-consciousness. It's, and these are hard, again, these are hard lines to get out. He doesn't make it easy for himself as a singer. He doesn't he doesn't keep to like clipped, what would become like new wave phrasing where you get out one note at a time and it's easier to do that way. Like Hell writes these long flourishes, and and Quine's solos are, some of his, I mean, it almost sounds like they're messing with time, but Quine stretches out time and space in his solos, and it really does sound like it's some sort of weird tape manipulation that he's doing. But that's all just him. And his ability to have developed that playing style and to do it seemingly without a lot of effects. All the effects do, whatever he is using, because I know he does use things, because he told Lester Bangs, that's in a, he talks about that, of like, specific pedals that he would find. But everything he does is just, again, it's all just highlighting what's coming out of the fingers and what's coming out of the, there's no playing the effects, and there's no creating any imposing walls of sound or anything. It's that, and I guess that's what, again, just one more time, that's what makes it so jazz-like. And aside from the fact that they're going for easy 4/4 payoffs, and the song, it's like the world's most ferocious shuffle. And then you have those great sardonic falsetto backing vocals. Again, kind of this weird, like, warped version of doo-wop over that. It's again, super idiosyncratic. It's an absolutely magnificent song, and there's not really anything else like it. I knew a person who once compared it to said that Stray Cat Strut ripped it off, and I guess, but I mean, and I guess I can kind of hear similarities, but not really. Like, that's a pretty straightforward. I mean, I actually like that song. I kind of like the Stray Cats, but like, what you're getting with that, like, and it's I mean, there's a reason it was such a huge hit. Like, this is in another universe from something like that. So did the Stray Cats bite this song? I can't imagine that they did. Maybe somebody knows. I don't. But it is a phenomenal song and a phenomenal piece of lyric writing. So, one of the things that's interesting about this record is there's kind of these, I don't know. It's like the first agoraphobic rock album, or maybe is it the only agoraphobic rock album? The only other person I can think of who would have played around with those themes would have been Lou Reed, a little bit on the third Velvet Underground record, or there's hints of it on Transformer. But this is there's a lot of agoraphobia and a lot of desire to retreat into one's own world on this album, and I think Blank Generation is an amazing articulation of that, of just being that frustrated, having to exist in the world that we exist in. And then the next song is a Creedence Clearwater Revival cover theirs is called Walk on the Water. This is Walking on the Water. And it's about half the length. And, you know, Creedence, I mean, Fogerty sings it like Fogerty, you know what I mean? Like, it, you know, he gives it the full belt. And it's amazing, and they're great. Hell, what they do with this song is it's a lot stiffer and more brutal, and so much Quine's playing especially is so much starker, or not starker, but really stark. And Hell sings it all the way up at the top of his register, and this is just straight nightmare. I mean, this is just straight horror, and it's a horror movie in whatever 2.5 minutes. It's Hell sings it as a truly haunted man. And part of what's interesting is, you know, the album flirts with self-oblivion, self-immolation. You know, it flirts with all of these dark, very negative things. And then it gets to this point, and it's interesting because, you know, he gets to the edge and he doesn't want to be there. He does not like what he sees. And I think that's also part of what's so powerful about this album, because when you do get out there, you know, I think you have protective instincts that kick in, and on some level you know it's wrong. And I think you know, it kind of like with Arthur Lee on Forever Changes. I think that's a good articulation of it as well. This sort of, you get out there and it does feel like a horror movie. It does. I'm going to reference this movie yet again. It does feel like Fire Walk with Me. It's scary, and this has the fucking fear. The fear is real, and it's interesting that Hell did this in a cover as opposed to writing that himself, because, you know, side one is full of, you know, clinical auto psychoanalysis and tearing things out of yourself. But when it comes down to the sort of the nitty-gritty horror terror of being out in that state, he looks to interpret somebody else, and he's an amazing interpreter. This is an incredible cover. This is a virtuoso cover or interpretation of somebody else's song, because it becomes a Voidoids song. It becomes a crucial Voidoids song. So amazing performance, and the band is lean and perfect on this, as they are throughout the album. The next song is the most agoraphobic, I suppose, and that is The Plan, a sort of loping, I guess, again, kind of a loping country song. It's the second, I want to say it's the second longest song on the record. I haven't looked at the running times, but it is, I'm going to say it is the darkest song ever written, as far as like a psychological case study, as far as a short story. I think it's darker and goes further than the Velvet Underground. I think it goes darker and further than some of the Rolling Stones stuff from the late 60s. This is, you know, this is scary William Burroughs stuff, and that it's in a rock and roll song, and that it has these kind of ironic, confirming, again, kind of doo-wop backing vocals, and this loping shuffle, or I guess, is it a shuffle, or I don't know. It's somewhere between a shuffle and a waltz. And I mean, it could be an old rockabilly song musically. And, you know, I don't want to give away the story, but is it like the most sinister song ever written? Is it more sinister than... It's more sinister than anything Alice Cooper would have done, because Alice Cooper tended to put a moral on it. Like, the bad guy gets his, or there's some sort of, punishment is given out. This song, part of what's great about this song, you know, we live in a very stupid time now. We live in, I'm going to say culturally, and this goes across the board, this does not matter who you vote for. I'm going to say that we live in the most conservative time that I've ever been through. And I grew up under Reagan and never thought it would be more conservative than that. But the fact that some of the, you know, some of the people who consider themselves the great thinkers of our time think that depiction equals endorsement. I mean, that's one of the stupidest ideas of all times. Or that depiction equals what you really wish you could be doing, and that your creative expression is like because that's, you really wish you could get down like that. But, you know, I find all of that disgusting and unbelievably reductive and unbelievably cynical, and I fucking hate that. Like, that to me is just evil, and is just such it is a conservative mentality, old school conservative mentality, and I do not like that. I do not like that mentality, fucking one bit, because it erodes the fields that artists need to be able to run around in, and it inhibits people, and it inhibits both the audience and the creative person. So that fucking shit to me is the enemy. And this and a song like this is, you know, songs like this, art like this is necessary. So, you know, something that is, you know, Salo even is the point of Salo. As wild as Salo is, Salo still has a point, and the point is decrying the evils of fascism, right? But there are people who still get hung up within the depiction of that. They still think it doesn't matter it doesn't matter that Pasolini was fucking murdered in part for making that movie. Like, that's not enough that he was fucking killed. There are still people who will demonize him over that, or say, oh, we know what he was about. It's really fucked up. It's so gross. And in the case of Pasolini, like, fucking not even death is enough for some of these lunatics. So I hate this shit. So, you know, this song, part of it, to me, it's strength. And what used to be pointed out as a strength for everything from early Ghetto Boys to Lou Reed, like the Berlin album, or a song like this, is the lack of judgment. That, like, this is Hubert Selby, this is William Burroughs stuff. This is, there's not a moralism imposed upon you. It is dangerous, sinister stuff just presented to you, and you have to draw your own conclusions. And again, as a short story, this is way the fuck out of left field. And it's, you know, it's fucking dark, and made darker by the fact that the artist is not telling you what to think about it. The artist not telling you what to think about it is its power, and is its strength, and is its greatness. So, you know, even Richard's interjections of "this is where it counts," like, all of that stuff is, to me, I think this is one of the greatest songs ever written. I think it's absolutely fucking incredible. And things like this need to exist. This is a song like this. The existence of a song like this is the sign of a functioning culture, as far as I'm concerned, because it is taking a temperature of the culture's worst possible instincts. It's you don't get to report the fever if you take away the thermometer, and this song is the thermometer. And It's an amazing, amazing piece of writing. It's an amazing performance. And I have to say, Quine, does he take 2 extended solos? Again, this is beautiful James Burton soloing. I mean, this is gorgeous lyrical solos, and they are, again, they're basically compositions unto themselves. Incredible. And then we get the album's ultimate agoraphobic statement, Another World. 8.5 minutes of stuttering, deconstructed funk, urban, weird, wiry, herky-jerky funk. It predates the first Devo album, and I don't know that if Hell would have known about Devo at this point. I don't know how... By 77... I guess they were touring. Who influenced who? I don't know. Or if there was any influence. But this is just weird. It is just a weird, dark New York Times Square 2 a.m. fucked up song, and it doesn't. What's cool about it is it's the big 8.5 minute end of the album. Right, but it doesn't go. It never goes for the obvious payoffs. It doesn't go into big feedback. It doesn't go into big thrashing tempos. It just keeps deconstructing and keeps stuttering and stopping and starting and lurching and Hell's vocal is so intense and agonized, and it's sort of the final statement of a man just tearing himself out, and kind of the ultimate statement of the album that I could live with you in another world, but not this one. And this is a lot of this record is dark and sensual, and this is it's the saddest statement made by a wounded romantic, because I can't speak. I don't want to speak for the ladies, for the gals out there, but guys, how many times have you thought that about a girl? Going back to when you were fucking 12 years old. How many times do you think that, but you didn't phrase it that way, but you felt it? I could live with you in another world, but not this one. Fuck. That's hard. That's a hard, brutal, sad statement, made in the context of just this song that's like undoing itself as it's being done. It's a hell of a way to end the album, and it's a stark jolt of a extended jolt or extended series of jolts to end this goddamn thing. And it's an amazing ending to an amazing album. This album is obviously a fucking fearless masterpiece, staking out bold, original, idiosyncratic things that are hard to say, But Richard not only figures out a way to give voice to these feelings and give voice to the darkest that's within you, but he elevates it through his incredible facility for language, his incredible command of the aesthetics of poetry, and the ridiculous rhythmic prowess and ultimate tightness of his band. Oh, and he has like the best fucking electric guitar player other than like Jimi Hendrix at the time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, he's got like this fucking guy. Oh yeah, and then there's Quine, for fuck's sake. Oh, you've got that guy in your back pocket, Unbelievable. It is an incredible, incredible album. Now, that's where Blank Generation ends. However, this weird 1990 thing that I have has 2 bonus tracks. these 2 bonus tracks are not available anywhere else. Now, I am going to sound like Clinton Halen, but listen here, boys and girls. I am no Clinton Halen. And you know what? Clinton Halen, if he were to ever see this, would be like, that's right, you'll never be me. But that's not how I mean it, Clint. So, anyway, no, I'm kidding. I own like 10 of your fucking books, man. Jesus Christ. I've bought almost all of them, Clinton. Relax. Anyway. There's 2 bonus tracks on here. The first is I'm Your Man, the OG recording of I'm Your Man. And there are 2 versions out there, right? One on the Destiny Street reissue, which we will get to, and then one on the Time compilation, right here. So, this is the best of all 3. All 3 relatively follow the same arrangement. I think this one is just a shade too restrained, and what's on Destiny Street is just a shade too produced. I think that was on the Radar single from 1980 or 79. Don't hold me to that. But this one gets it exactly right. Even though Quine plays exactly the same solos on what's on the Destiny Street reissue, this has the uber ultimate slicing through the stereo picture guitar tone. It is even though the notes are the same, his tone on here is amazing. Just fucking melting glass guitar. It's like just, yeah, it's liquefied glass. It's fucking incredible. His 2 solos are 2 of the best fucking guitar solos like in the history of rock and roll. There, I said it. And as a vocal, Richard is at his least self-conscious. He is just the passion, the romance, the sensuality, the need to express oneself, the need for emotional reality, hunger for reality is this one. This is the fucking one. And it's one of my favorite vocal performances ever. And in the year 2000, I was having a fling with this girl, and she said that she would never date me because I wasn't romantic enough. And I quoted this song as she didn't know that I was quoting it. If I seem unromantic, be glad that I do, because what you say to me proves that I'm more romantic than you. And she kind of like looked at me like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's right. And it's just, I'm Your Man is just it's like one of the great like perverse love songs ever. It's so goddamn fucking good. And it's basically like a doo-wop song. Like, this is just straight out of the fucking 50s in the best possible way. Just in the best way of musical honesty, songwriting honesty, honesty of lyric, and honesty of performance. It's real as fuck, and I absolutely love it. And there's like a repeated, I don't know if it would be not the refrain, but like I guess it's like a repeated bridge. That's absolutely beautiful, and Quine's little melodic runs behind that are gorgeous. It is absolutely magnificent. And you know, I will say, so my wife and I met on a dating website, and I decided on the dating website I thought, I'm gonna put musical references into my dating website profile, and I am gonna find the right woman. I am sending this psychically out into the fucking universe, and I am gonna get the right woman. All right, the right woman's gonna, even if she's never heard of these songs, or even if she doesn't know what the fuck I'm referencing, the right woman's gonna get this. The right woman is gonna get the wounded romantic is gonna speak with the romantic part, right, and not the wounded part. And so my screen name was IYM, and then I had a number or whatever, but IYM stood for I'm your man. I was subliminally putting that out there. I'm your man, you know? And so this was the song. This version of the song is what I was playing when I fucking made the profile that brought me my wife. And that is a perfect segue because I then linked to songs because you had like a comment, like a free section, and I realized you could put links into it. And I decided I am going to say what I have to say through songs. I am going to basically make like a weird version of like a mixtape. I'm going to use this space. And so I said, if you are tired of this, and I had a link to the Buzzcocks, What Do I Get? And I said, but what you really want is this. And then I had a link to the Ronettes, Walking in the Rain. And did I put Santo and Johnny's Sleepwalk in there? I might have. I don't know that I did. I certainly would have thought about it. Or this, and I put Angel Baby, the Rosie and the Originals, which, if you want a comparison for this version of I'm Your Man and the sound of it, and the backing vocals and everything, Rosie and the Originals. This is the punk rock version of Angel Baby. Okay? It's that. But written by like a smart-ass, wounded romantic, king of New York, poet, fucking original as fuck, amazing genius motherfucker guy. If that guy wrote Angel Baby, it would be I'm Your Man, okay? So anyway, so I think I had Angel Baby in there. So if you want this Walking in the Rain, or maybe even this Angel Baby, and maybe even someday potentially this, I linked to Richard Hell's cover of Mr. Jimmy Van Heusen's All the Way, as popularized by Frank Sinatra. All the Way, which sounds like a very simple pared down demo recording. The drums are very quiet. It sounds like a 50s, like a one mic 50s recording, like OG country music or OG doo-wop, where the person singing, taking the solo steps up to the microphone and then steps back, right? It has that. That's what it sounds like. Maybe because that's even what it is. I don't know. But Richard sings it. This is not the wounded romantic. This is the romantic. And he sings these lyrics with an earnestness and a beauty that Sinatra doesn't touch. Sinatra's version is great, but it's Sinatra being Sinatra. This is wide open and emotionally vulnerable. This is like, I think one of the most romantic things ever recorded. And I've read stuff, it's a piss take that predates Sid's version of My Way. No, it isn't. Fucking listen to My Way by Sid and listen to this. You gotta be like, you know, that's Matt, absolutely. That's just nonsensical. This is the real thing. His version of All the Way is one of my favorite things that has ever been recorded. And, I've sung it to myself God knows how many times, you know, because if you let me love you, it's for sure that I'm gonna love you all the way. Fuck. Richard sings it like his fucking life depends on it. Oh my God. It's amazing. And these two tracks, I'm gonna link them below. I will be your friend and find the fucking links to these and put them below so that you can hear them, so that you don't have to cast about, because you need to hear these. You need these songs. You need this in your life, you know? If you're a guy and you're single, you know, as John Lennon said, everybody needs a woman, you know? So if you're straight, if you're gay or whatever, like, cool, go do that, right on. But if you're a guy and you're straight, everybody needs a woman, and you need these songs in your life, and they can get you a woman. You know, all the shit that they say, all those aphorisms, feed the right wolf, you know, lead with the right energy. This is leading with the right energy. This is going to get you where you fucking need to go. All right. I speak from experience. So, yeah. So anyway, That's Blank Generation. Where does one go from there? Where does one go? Well, we will find out soon. So, what happened to the Voidoids? The original Voidoids, I should say. And I am going to be consulting notes throughout this because, things are it's a complicated tale. Two things really happened. Funnily enough, the same thing that happened to the Sex Pistols, and that happened to Nirvana later on. Heroin and touring. It's a bad mix. And so the Voidoids went on a tour of England, opening for The Clash. One of those performances featuring a cameo by Johnny Rotten is on here. It's on disc 2. Not great recording, but really powerful, extremely impressive, and it's probably the closest to like full-on prime Voidoids you're gonna get, with Quine in kind of full command of his guitar genius. There are also some songs from a 78 show in New York with Elvis Costello sitting in. And they do the song Fun Hunt, which is really cool, and for a long time it was the only version that I knew of that existed of Fun Hunt, which is a song that I really, really like. But yeah, Richard doesn't play ball. He's not that kind of guy. He's not a yes man. He's not a company man. And then on top of that, you add heroin. And also, I think that I'm gonna armchair psychoanalyze for a second. I think that in the making of Blank Generation and having been through so many bands and I think that it was the realization of something for him, and I think it was hard to I think it was probably kind of hard to figure out what the hell to do next. And this is where, and Mark Bell left to go off and become Marky Ramone. There's an interesting clip out on YouTube talking about the Voidoids, and Anthony Bourdain is interviewed in it, and Bourdain says, like, the thing that nobody remembers is that there was no money in any of this. These guys were broke. And that's the thing about punk. Like, when people do sort of punk revisionism, that like, you'll see fictionalized things of, like, the Sex Pistols playing to arenas. Like, go watch the footage of the size of the audiences, there's this sort of there's this weird alternate history that's sort of been created over like the last 30 years. Funnily enough, as people try to write themselves into history gets distorted. As people pick their own histories, history gets distorted. Coincidence? So, at any rate, Marky Ramone, by the time he left the Voidoids, because they weren't touring, and Hell really did not like touring after coming back from England. Marky Ramone was reduced to eating dog food. So he wanted a gig and he wanted to work, and he went with the hardest workingest goddamn band on the planet. So that explains his move. But when you're down that drummer, and then eventually Ivan left as well. But yeah, I think here's the other sort of big problem is, and I think that this is the problem that Nirvana hit up against. It's interesting because Richard Hell is famously not a Beatles fan, but I'm going to drag the Beatles into this too. It's interesting that when the initial sort of rush of inspiration for the Beatles sort of ended in like the end of '64, that John and Paul sort of carried the band with craftsmanship for a little while before the next round of inspiration really kicks in, which would have been like Rubber Soul. And I think that, I think that Nirvana was at a similar point as the Voidoids, that I think it was probably galling on some level to both Richard and Kurt that they were as good at being craftsmen as they were. That all the years of playing and all the years of summoning up inspiration and whirling dervish, rock and roll intensity, that there was this ability, that there was this craft underneath that had sort of that they could rely upon. And I think that, if you listen to me, Nirvana 93 going into 94, there's Kurt as an interpreter, as a band leader. To me, the band is only getting more and more interesting and only expanding out and out. But what's interesting is that he seemed to perceive the band to be at some sort of ending point. And the reason why is because it wasn't, the next wave of inspiration wasn't taking over. But what he was doing in spite of that was actually artistically advancing the band. And, when you are about inspiration and intensity and reality, craftsmanship somehow feels like a cheat. It somehow feels wrong. And on some level, it feels deceptive, even though it actually isn't. And so I'm doing something I normally don't like to do, where I'm sort of projecting intention. But I feel like that's sort of a similar impasse to where Hell was at. And so I am going to kind of briefly get into the 1979 Voidoids recordings, the Voidoids Mark II, and the lineup is, Hell didn't want to play bass anymore, so the lineup is, at this point, Ivan, Quine, Fred Morrow was the new drummer, and they got a bass player, Jerry Antonius. So the first thing that they recorded was with Nick Lowe producing, was The Kid with the Replaceable Head, and the version of I'm Your Man that I was talking about before that's just slightly too produced. Kid with a Replaceable Head winds up later on Destiny Street, so I'll talk about it then, other than to say this version, the Nick Lowe version, is the logical next creative step for the band, the logical next step for Hell. And if he didn't have his doubts and didn't have the drug addiction and didn't kind of resent having to go and tour. I remember he said in an interview once, like, that when you're on tour, like, everybody talks to you like you're an idiot, and that just drove him crazy. If he didn't have all of that happening, The Kid with the Replaceable Head would have been the logical next step. It would have been the logical next phase. But like I said, we'll get into that song more in the next video. And then there's I'm Your Man. And then, so those are the two recordings from 78. 79, there's another set of recordings. Some of that stuff showed up on here, on this reissue, but the 79 stuff is in full on Destiny Street Complete. It is on the second disc. So that is what I'm referencing. Also, if you buy Spurts, the version of Time and Crack of Dawn and Kid with a Replaceable Head are the 78/79 versions. So for frame of reference, so Crack of Dawn is, again, kind of the next logical extension past The Kid with the Replaceable Head. It's a one-off recording. It's an amazing song. It's brilliant lyric writing. It's, again, sort of got that sort of power pop kind of feel, power pop kind of new wave feel, but with a lot of intensity and a lot of passion in the band. These are very straightforward recordings. I mean, these are not like produced. This is just kind of what they would call, like band mixes. But it is an incredible song, and Hell's lyrics are so interesting and so imagistic, and it's the next stage past the sort of agoraphobic, stuff on Blank Generation. It's engaging with the world, forcing oneself to engage with the world, to break through, the invisible walls, the glass or plasticine walls encasing oneself. And it's an amazing song. And a love of nature, or appreciation or awe of nature, sort of starts to come out in this period. There's an amazing version of Going, Going, Gone, which winds up getting re-recorded on Destiny Street. I'll talk about it then. But the version here has an absolute stonker of a Quine solo. There is a studio version of Fun Hunt, which is amazing, and I just really wish that they had done a version of this for Destiny Street. It would have made so much sense for that album. It's just this really awesome, modern, jagged, like, funk groove, like, just downtown New York groove that's awesome, and Hell's lyrics are great fucking sort of perfect rock and roll lyrics. And the way he sings it, there's almost a twang to his voice that's another interesting contrast. Not twang, there's not twang, there's like a hiccup to his voice that's like a new development and a new part of his expression. And it's just such a great song. And it's one of my favorites, one of my favorite things that he ever did. The guitars on it are fucking amazing. Another Quine guitar. Robert Quine is one of the greatest guitar players that ever lived, and I mentioned that. Then there is, I'm unfamiliar with this song, Ridgely and Bartholomew. I don't know this song. I'm unfamiliar with it, called I Live My Life. That's like played here, I don't know the original, played here as a sort of piss-take 50s parody, and the lyrics are ridiculously self-centered and hilariously self-centered. Does hell mean it literally? Maybe. I don't know, because he could be very isolated at times. So it's hard to tell what the intention of the song is, but it's so exaggerated. But then again, I don't know, because there's the stuff about if you live your life, you live it, you live it like that every day. I don't know, but it's a one-off, so I guess we shall never know. Ignore That Door winds up being recorded for Destiny Street. I would think that this is probably the definitive version. It's really intense. Ignore That Door, no, I don't know. I take that back. I don't think there is a definitive version of that song. I really don't. But this version is amazing and, like, very, very, very intense. But we'll talk about that more later. Smitten is an almost there. Like, it could have been a great song. It could have been a really beautiful ballad. Like, it's almost there. And Hell refers to some of these songs in process as slant songs. And I wish that he had believed in the craft part of it more and leaned on the band a little bit more, because these could have been developed further into classics, It's almost there, and it's just a shame that it didn't go further and get more developed. Staring in Her Eyes winds up on Destiny Street. I think this version, I actually prefer this version. Destiny Street, the Destiny Street version is probably my least favorite song on that record. I prefer this kind of slower, more, I don't know, contained, I guess, version. But we'll talk about that more later. And then there's Time. This is the best version of Time. Again, also on here. It's the best version of Time. I think it's the same version that's on here as well. So the Destiny Street version, which was the only known version really for a long time, it has, this has been now thrice released. Is it the best version of his best song? Yes, probably. But it's such a key song on Destiny Street. We will talk about it then, and I will contrast it against this one. So that will be in the next video. And then, so Time and the next song, Don't Die, came out on an EP on Shake Records. Is that right? Yes. Or a single on Shake Records in 1980, but these are the last two songs recorded in 79. Don't Die is the most produced. Well, no. Time is also far more produced. Oh, and that's the other thing. The fidelity on Destiny Street Complete of the 79 recordings is better than the versions than the same recordings on Time. So this is ultimately what you would want to get. This has now become more what was in the early 2000s a revelation of a release, a revelatory roundup of songs and recordings, is now funnily a little bit more of a completist thing. So, and like I said, it's now, it appears to have to some degree vanished off the internet. So maybe it's out on some of the streaming services, I don't know, but what I see, I haven't seen it. But Don't Die, which wound up getting re-recorded for Destiny Street, Don't Die is absolutely phenomenal, and it is a masterpiece of a song. It's the refutation of Who Says It's Good to Be Alive. And it is incredibly written. I don't even want to start quoting it because I would just read the whole damn set of lyrics. Go and look it up because, oh my God, or maybe I'll link to the lyrics, or maybe this just the song, or both, you never know. It's just an incredible piece of writing. The clarity and depth of expression are absolutely ridiculous. Hell had gone up another level as a writer, and it's unfortunate that his desire to be a band leader and his desire to tour kind of and even play the bass evaporated, because the generation, I mean, the material that he was generating was so much the next level and the next development. The lyrics of Don't Die are absolutely phenomenal, and one of a great and passionate argument for life and the desire to live. And the way that it is produced, it's just such a cool, interesting kind of, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say smoky. That's not right. But shadowy, maybe. It's just a great, it's punk rock film noir as a recording. It's outstanding, and I cannot recommend it enough. It is an incredible song, and again, I can't figure out why it wouldn't have wound up on Destiny Street. Just a phenomenal, one of his greatest songs. So I think, that is good for this video. It's Richard Hell in the 70s, 73 to 79. I think we will pick up next time with the Destiny Street saga, and then what would have been the R.I.P. EP on ROIR Records. It's acronyms ahoy. There wasn't a moment to spare in the 80s. So I think this is pretty good for this video. I can't imagine how long this goddamn thing's going to be. But at any rate, I hope that you've enjoyed this, and the next video will be coming, hot and fast, pretty soon. So, hope you're all doing well out there. Thank you very much for watching, and, like and comment and subscribe and all the glorious things that YouTube offers. It's a wonderful world that we live in this modern age, what with all these technological advances and all of these super modern conveniences. So, yeah, I think that's good for now. So, again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!
You just finished watching Rich talk